This is Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage, your place for all things Wisconsin sports. Now, your host, Trage.
How we doing, everybody, and welcome into Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage, as we're coming in here on this Wednesday. I hope you guys are enjoying your Wednesday so far. I hope you guys have enjoyed your week so far. I'm recording the show on the Wednesday today. Usually it's on Tuesday night. As you guys know, the show is pre-recorded, so it's usually Tuesday night I record it. The radio guys work with the Wednesday. We get it out Wednesday afternoon there, Wednesday evening, 5 to 7, right, as you're hearing it right now. But last night, late night service call. Wells were all screwed up on a farm, so I had to go out there. We figured out the well, got the well running, so that was great. But I got home about 10:30, did not get the show recorded. So here I am sitting here this morning recording the show today. So I know you guys are like, why does that matter? It doesn't really matter. I just figured I'd tell you what's going on. So there you go. Now you know. Now you know what's going on with me. I hope you guys are enjoying your Wednesday and your week so far here since we talked this last Saturday here. Today here on the show, we're going to talk a lot of Brewers. The whole show. Basically, the whole show is going to be Brewers. We're going to talk a little baseball in general, right? We're going to have AL talk going on with Kyle later on here in the show. We're going to get Aaron on, good friend of the show. He's going to talk about the NL a little bit there. So we're going to get a little bit of the outside perspective of a lot of different teams around the league. But a lot of Brewer talk to get to today here on the show. Not a whole lot of time for anything else, right? Today, we got opening day tomorrow against the White Sox here. The season technically starts today here, tonight after the show is done. You'll be able to watch the Giants and Yankees square off there. The season starts there, but the Brewers officially start tomorrow. I believe they got to be one of the earliest pitches tomorrow there too, 1:10. There might be some other games that are around the same time, but one of the earliest games starting tomorrow. So exciting stuff there. Brewer baseball is back. I can't wait to talk about it all today here. We had a lot of fan questions, and if you guys want to be involved at all in the shows here during the weeks or on the weekend there on Saturdays, hit up the text in line, 715-990-4914. That is 715-990-4914. I got so many questions in. I'm just going to basically use today's show. We're just going to go through all of your questions, talk about them here on the show, and get into all of them. That's going to be a majority of it today here on the show. So I want to start with them right now. I want to start out with some of these questions here right off the top. Then we'll come back. We'll continue the Brewer questions here all through hour number 1 and hour number 2 and just keep rolling it. So right away, the biggest question I think a lot of people are having right now is with the offseason that the Brewers have. And the question I had was, what was your impression on the Brewers offseason? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did they make it? And there was a couple questions of, did they make enough moves for, to feel comfortable? Did you like the moves that they made? A lot of those kinds of questions. I would say, for me, the Brewers made, so you think about the trades, right? You had the big ones, right? Freddie Peralta and Caleb Durbin. I thought you got really good depth pieces in there for the pitching staff. Hitting wise, I like Jet, and I also like what they brought in with David Hamilton there. I would say this offseason for me was under the radar kind of offseason. Like, did not make any crazy moves, didn't do anything. I don't know if you count the Freddie Peralta move as crazy. Some people would, some people wouldn't. But you traded Freddie Peralta, you traded Caleb Durbin. I guess, okay, I forgot. You traded Isaac Collins and Nick Mears. So you had those three bigger name guys, I guess, get sent out the door. But I thought the guys that you brought in Brandon Sproul, you brought in Kyle Harrison, you brought in Duran, you got David Hamilton, you brought in Jet Williams. You had all those guys come back. And I think those are big pieces. I do. I think they're under the radar pieces. So the offseason that the Brewers have, though they did not make the moves that some people would have wanted them to make, did they make the change? I think the question would be, did they make, because last season you had 97 wins, you went to the NLCS. So when you have a season like that and you have a majority of your roster is going to come back, you say to yourself, okay, what's next? What do the Brewers have to do next to get over that hump, to get to the World Series, to see this team in the World Series? Because it felt like you were close, right? You met up with the super team and the Dodgers, the spend all the money Dodgers. You met up with them. They swept you out of the playoffs. So now it's okay. What do you have to do to beat them? Well, You got to spend a lot more money to beat them, right? But I think where a lot of people lost this offseason is that the Brewers didn't seem, and this is where I got upset when the Brewers made the Freddie Peralta deal. Not so much that they traded Freddie Peralta, and I emphasize that 4,000 times, and yet people still argued with me. I emphasized it 4,000 times that I understood why they traded Freddie and made sense. He was in the last year of his contract. You wanted to get something from him. I get that. I understand that. Could you have traded him at the deadline? Sure. But do you want to implode the clubhouse halfway through the year? It didn't work out with Josh Hader, so you didn't want to do it again. I get why people were like, well, it had to happen. I understand why they made the move. What I didn't like was that you made that move, but you have not made any moves to that point to make the team, in my eyes, better than what you were before. Because when you have a 97-win team, you think, okay, what do I have to do to get not 97 wins, but what do I have to do to get past the NLCS, to get to the World Series? What more can I add, right? And instead of adding, you subtracted your ace of your staff. And at that point, you hadn't really done anything to add to this team. You just traded Freddie for Brandon Sprout and Jet Williams. Now, I think Sprout's going to be fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I think he's going to be fantastic. I think he's going to be a very underrated piece in this rotation this season. I think Jet's going to be fantastic. So I think I like the move in general. What upset me was that at that point you had traded Freddie Peralta, a front line, on top of your rotation starter, for prospects. And it felt like you haven't done anything to get better going into the 2026 season. So I had said that. So I think that's where a lot of fans were at with some of these moves is they have unproven guys who haven't really seen a lot of major league time. They're not household names yet. And they get worrisome then. And that's where I think a lot of the questions that I have here that I wrote down from fans out there were questions about the rotation and the youth about the rotations. And you look at all those are the big questions that everybody's having right now. Is with the youth, with all these young guys, is it going to work out? Are we going to see a Brewers team that can compete for the NL Central, compete for the division, and then compete for the National League crown? Is this a team that can do that? And I think that's the worry that a lot of people have coming off this offseason. Now, do I think that they made some good moves? Yes. I think adding these pieces that they did, I think the pieces that they added are very underrated, like I've said. I think David Hamilton is going to be a very underrated add to the Brewers depth piece. He's going to be a utility guy. And I think he's going to be a very good utility guy that can hit. I do. And then Luis Rengifo, bringing him in. It's not a huge move, but I think Rengifo's got a lot of good at-bats in him yet. I think Rengifo is going to be a solid pickup there. And then you have guys coming back from last year. You're Lockridge. Seeing him advance a year, I think that's going to be big. Keeping Garrett Mitchell healthy, that's going to be big. Improving from within, right? But then I'm just talking rotation-wise. I think Kyle Harrison and Brandon Sprout are going to be a 1-2 punch that nobody's expecting, but are going to be really good. So that's where I think right now a lot of people are worried about this team. Did they make the moves in the offseason to make themselves better? I think they did. I just think they're under-the-radar moves that you have to see play out. And I think they will play out. I just think a lot of people they need the eyeball test, right? And I'm that kind of way too. I need to see it. I can't just see it on paper. I can't just read the metrics and be like, oh, well, he's got this much drop on his curveball has got this much spin on it. It's like, yeah, that's cool. But can he get guys out? Can one of these lefties get Shohei Ohtani out? That's the question that you're looking at. That's the question that you want answered. And that's the question I think is going to be answered when you start seeing these guys. Because once I started seeing the Sprout and seeing Harrison and seeing some of these guys on the mound there for the Brewers, you started to like it. And you were like, okay, I can see what they saw. And when you have a pitching coaching staff like the Brewers do, this pitching lab that they have, that they just somehow squeeze the best out of everybody, you have nothing but faith. And I have nothing but faith that the offseason moves that the Brewers made were the right ones, and they're going to find a way to put it all together this season. So I'm excited. I think they made the moves, and I'm going to tell you why today. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to go through all these questions. Like I said, boatload of questions to get into today from you guys out there. So thank you guys for sending in your questions. We're going to start it up here. Next segment, I'm going to start rolling through them here. We're going to start talking pitching. We're going to get into the bats. We're going to talk about it all. We'll be right back here on Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. Welcome back into Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage, as we're coming back in here on this Wednesday. And hey, this next segment of the show here, we're going to talk a lot of Brewers the rest of the way. This next segment is brought to you by Casa M Spice Company. Are you craving bold gourmet flavor without those MSGs, fillers, or excess salt? Meet Casa M Spice Company, the award-winning spice blend born in Texas. You'll ignite your taste buds and create fresh flavors meal after meal. This stuff's fantastic. I put it on everything. My eggs in the morning, I'm throwing that Casa M Spice on there. If the Traeger is even leaving the garage, it has got Casa M Spice riding right on it, ready to be thrown on whatever I'm putting on there, whether it's ribs, steak, burgers, anything. I am throwing Casa M Spice on there. This stuff is fantastic. Check them out there, any Ace Hardware. Otherwise, search them up across social media. Find them out there. You can search them up, Casa M Spice Company. So, opening day is here tomorrow. Technically, opening day of baseball is here today. After the show is done tonight, you'll be able to watch the Giants and Yankees square off there in the first game of the 2026 MLB season. But opening day for the Brewers is tomorrow, and I am through the roof ready to watch. After watching the Badgers get dropped out of March, I am just ready to turn the page and watch Brewer baseball, because then I get 162 games of endless summer fun. Like Mark Ananasio said, his job is to give me summer nights of fun and entertainment. So he's doing a good job. He did a good job last year. Hopefully he does another good job this year. I don't know if I'm poking a bear with a lot of people with those comments there, but Brewers tomorrow, 1:10, taking on the White Sox there. And I want to start today. We have a lot of questions to get to, a lot of questions from people who commented it on the show, a lot of questions that I got across text and line, everything like that. And if you want to be involved in the show or get a part of the questions, hit me up 715-990-4914. That is 715-990-4914. But a lot of the questions, and I think the biggest one that I've seen from a lot of people, is about this Brewers rotation. And I think it is kind of surprising. Right? And not surprising, should I say, that people are questioning the rotation this year. It's surprising that the Brewers have now reached the point where we are questioning the rotation. We have not questioned the rotation in a while. At least I haven't. Just because you've always had steady hands in there, right? Burns, Woodruff, Peralta were in there. And then you had Peralta and Woodruff. And I know Woodruff's had injury problems, but you've always had constant guys in there. And now you don't. But this Brewers pitching coaching staff is fantastic. So if there's any confidence, if you have any doubts, just remember that those guys are still employed by the Brewers, that they have a fantastic pitching lab and they know how to work with pitchers and they know how to get the best out of guys. So just remember that if you have doubts. Now, if that comes back to bite me by saying that and the pitching staff just implodes and everything just looks terrible, well, it's my fault. It's my fault. I'll take the blame on that. But I want to start there. I want to start talking about this Brewer pitching, because one of the biggest questions that I've gotten, and it was from multiple different texting line people and across social media, was about Brandon Woodruff. And because there was question mark going into the season, was if Brandon Woodruff was going to be healthy enough to even be in the starting 5 or 6, whatever they were going to go to start the year. And that was one of the biggest topics, one of the biggest questions. And now we find out that he is. He's ready to go. He's going to be ready for the 5th game here of the season when they're taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. So now the question has become, can he be a reliable starter for you this season? Can you rely on Brandon Woodruff? I think so. The velocity's dropped, right? He doesn't have the blow-by stuff. He doesn't have the 97 that we've seen in the past. He's going to be in that 92 range right there, a cruise speed. He's going to be around that. He's going to fluctuate in there. I know he's got another game. He's going to pitch in a sim game yet before his next start. So he's going to have a sim game. He's going to leave and then come back and then he's going to be ready for that Tampa Bay Rays series there. So he's going to be ready. He's just got another ramp-up game before he gets there. With Brandon Woodruff, the thing that's going to make him go is, what does the command look like? If he has command on his pitches, he still has the movement, he still has the ability to dot corners, Brandon Woodruff's going to be reliable and he's going to be really good. I think he's going to be really good. Is he going to have the high strikeout numbers that you would want to see out of your starter, right? Is he going to have that? No, I don't think so. Is he going to have the ability to induce some ground balls, induce some hot flies, get the Brewers to 5-6 innings in a game? Yeah, I think so. Is he going to go complete? I don't think that's going to be the case. Maybe, right? Hopefully, he can throw you a gem like that. But with Brandon Woodruff, I think the correct expectation, the realistic expectation, is he's going to be a 4-5 starter in your rotation. And that's fine. If you have Brandon Woodruff as a 4 or 5 in your rotation, you're doing pretty darn good. You're doing pretty darn good. And that's where he slots in right now. And that was, I think, partially because they want to give him that ramp-up period. But if he sits solid in that 4 or 5 in that rotation and those other guys can produce ahead of him there, I like where they're sitting. I don't want to see the Brewers I don't want to say I don't want to see them do it because it worked out with Quinn Priester. I don't want to see them make a rash, quick move for a veteran starter that they just feel like is going to work, right? I don't want to see them go out and make some crazy move because they feel like they have to. They have a lot of depth right now. They're just working a lot of that depth back. You have a lot of pieces. And we talked about this in the offseason. When the Brewers made some trades and they got starters on top of starters, and everybody said, why are you trading this guy? Why are you trading that guy? Why do you need all these starters? It doesn't make sense. And it makes sense now. Because they know, we've dealt with injuries. Last season, a ton of injuries. That's why they got Quinn Priester to begin with. So this is why they have all that depth, is a just in case. And maybe you see the Brewers flip to a 6-man rotation at some point to give Brandon Woodruff more time in between starts. Maybe they work that way. I don't know how. You never know with Pat Murphy and company how they're going to operate a season. They do it in an unorthodox, some people don't agree, different than the big clubs. Like they operate in a different way, but they get the job done. And that's where I say, if anybody's going to be able to get the best out of these guys, and especially out of Brandon Woodruff now and be able to help him adjust to being you don't want to say a different pitcher, but a different style of pitcher, it's going to be Chris Hook. It's going to be this pitching lab is going to be able to get him going. So I am comfortable with Brandon Woodruff. I'm comfortable with Brandon Woodruff. If you had to rely on him to be a 1 or 2 in the rotation, maybe I'm a little more nervous just because of the injury issue, just because of the injury past. Then I would be a little bit more nervous about him heading into this one. But right now, as a 5, I'm not worried at all. Because of the guys ahead of him. I have some bold predictions that I'm going to be talking about later here in the show for one of these really young guys that I think he's going to be nothing but fantastic for the Brewers this season. And just looking ahead of him even then, you have guys like Misiorowski and Patrick who are going to be at the top of that rotation. I loved what I saw out of Chad Patrick last season there, especially coming out of the bullpen there late in the season. I thought he turned over a new leaf. I said Corbin Burns 2.0 right there, just watching him. Because he's got that, I don't know if it's, what do you call it, moxie or fire? Or what is, moxie's a big word. That's too big for this early in the morning. He's got that kind of, that motor. When I watched him pitch, especially in that Cubs game, I just felt Corbin Burns. I felt Corbin Burns out there. And Corbin Burns kind of took that backwards path, right? Where he started in the bullpen, worked his way back, became a good top of the end rotation starter. So now maybe you see that with Chad Patrick. He's got the stuff. He's got good stuff. Now it's about control and command with that stuff with Chad Patrick, because I know in one of his last spring training starts there, he kind of got lit up. I believe, was that against the Cubs? And then he got it lit up there and leaving a lot of stuff, getting too much of the plate. Now, spring training, you have to remember, spring training, pitchers are working through a lot of different things, whether it's a grip, whether it's an arm slot. Lots of things are being worked through with these pitchers. So you have to remember that too when you take into account what happens in those games. They don't really, their spring training ERA, especially if they already made the roster, like Chad Patrick was relatively safe on the roster. If he's working through things, his performance out there, the numbers that he puts up or the numbers that get put up against him aren't as majorly they're not as of a concern, right? Now, you take that with a grain of salt because there are times where you have to look at, okay, well, what happened against him in that start? Oh, he gave up 10 hits. Well, why? Okay, yeah, he was leaving just a heater over the plate too much there. He's becoming predictable, whatever. Those things can be worrisome there, but spring training, sometimes you're going to work through an inning where you're only going to throw 2 pitches, or you're only going to throw 3 pitches, and you're going to work through just those 3 pitches to try and get them in sequence. You're not going to throw in whatever pitch, maybe it's a changeup or whatever it is. You're going to stay away from that. That's feeling good. I'm going to work through my curveball right now, work through this. So you have a lot of different areas where you're working through. So that's where you have to take what happens in spring training with a grain of salt there, especially on the pitching side of it. So Chad Patrick, I'm not worried about that. I think Chad Patrick's a darn good pitcher. A lot of people question, though, going into it, was Misiorowski the right guy for opening day? That was a question that I got. Did you like the Misiorowski opening day decision by the Brewers? Yeah, I don't know who. I said Chad Patrick would have been my other option. We talked about it a few weeks ago, and we said if you were to guess today, who would you have as the Brewers opening day starter? You had no Quinn Priester and question marks with Brandon Woodruff. As we know, he's going to be a starter to start the year here, but he's not going to be ready to go for opening day. So the question was, who would you have? And basically the only 2 options that you could really say were Chad Patrick or Misiorowski. And I said you could have Chad Patrick in there, but Misiorowski I feel like is the best option. You have opening day. He's got the electric arm. And I think Misiorowski, he gets a lot of hate. He gets a lot of hate out there. A lot of opposing fans don't like the antics, the weird stuff, right? The weird stuff. The Cub fans get all fired up about that. I don't know why. I mean, he's I don't want to say weird, but he's weird, right? He's weird, and that's okay. He's weird good, like good weird. I don't know if there's a good weird. He's a good weird, and it's okay that way. Misiorowski, though, he's got the fire in his arm. He's got good breaking stuff. I think he's the right decision for opening day. He's going to bring the electricity to American Family Field there to open up the year. That's all you want. That's all you want. And honestly, like I said, who is going to be your next best option? Most likely Chad Patrick. I don't know if I'm throwing Sprout out there on opening day. I don't know if I'm throwing Harrison out there on opening day. I think Misiorowski was the right choice. I do. I don't think there's much worry in there for me. So, yeah, Misiorowski opening day, Chad Patrick game 2 there. The question that I had next was, how concerned are you about this young rotation with no Freddie, but tons of young arms across the board? That was a big question. I kind of touched into it before there. I really like the young arms that the Brewers have. I really, really like the young arms that this Brewers team has. Going off of just what we're going to see in the opening day rotation, you look at them and you have Sprout, Harrison, but then outside of those guys, outside of those 2 that are going to be in their side, and technically you could count Chad Patrick in there, and you could also throw in Misiorowski into that young arm race. The only real veteran arm that you have in your rotation is Brandon Woodruff. So now you do, without Freddie, you have a really young staff going into this season. And I really like it. I really like it. The Brewers have made a living off of young guys. They've made a living off of having young guys in there who just have a different kind of motor and a different kind of drive to them, and a constant need to prove themselves, right? And I think that's what makes them so good. When you look at Sal Frelick and you look at like a Jackson Chourio or a Bryce Terang, those guys constantly needing to prove themselves week after week, game after game. That, I think, is what makes the difference and why the Brewers are so successful, is the young guys, and the young guys drive to just be scrappy, be the best, and try to get to that point there. I really do. And looking at this young rotation, I think that's exactly what you see. Brandon Sprout in this rotation now, he's fantastic. This guy right here in Brandon Sprout, the strikeout, I don't want to give away my bold predictions right now. I don't want to give away them all. But I think Brandon Sprout is due for a fantastic year for the Brewers right now. He has a fantastic breaking ball that nearly unhittable for Brandon Sprout. Kyle Harrison, both of them, electric arms. Kyle Harrison has been fantastic there, the lefty. I think he's just going to be nothing but great, especially as a 4 in the rotation right now. I think he's going to be nothing but great. Robert Gasser brings a little bit of an element to that left-sided arm there. And then Logan Henderson. You still have him in the fold. Logan Henderson has been fantastic for you in the past. He's dealt with some injuries. Now he's trying to ramp himself back up. I see him being a big part of the rotation. Then you add in Shane Duran on top of that there. I have confidence that this young rotation right now, under this pitching coaching staff that they have, they're going to be able to figure them out. They'll be fine. And you have a steady arm in there in Brandon Woodruff. And I think that's the key. And we talked about Brandon Woodruff a little bit there earlier and what Brandon Woodruff could bring to this team. I think he brings that leadership aspect where he's going to be able to work with some of these young guys, be able to help them, be able to coach them through those tough moments, those tough games. All right. It's going to be a learn by failure. And that's okay. That's this team. That's this team for the Brewers. This rotation now is just a next step into what makes the Brewers great. And that is being able to bring in young talent, being able to utilize young talent, and being able to put them on the front line and then being able to figure it out. That's what they do consistently, and it works. And it's been working. And I think it's going to work again with this rotation. They have a lot of good arms in here. A lot of velocity in here. I think they're going to be good. I'm not concerned at all. I really liked, and I'll say it again, I really liked Freddie Peralta. But with Freddie Peralta, he was never an ace. And he was never meant to be an ace. Freddie Peralta's biggest problem is he just couldn't go deep into games, which taxed your bullpen. These guys here, they have a strong strikeout rate and a strong control of the strike zone. They're going to be able to work you a little bit later into games, which is going to save that bullpen, which you need. You had some of your guys last year who were pitching some of the most innings that they've seen in a very long time. Between Jared Koenig, Abner Uribe, Trevor McGill, you were seeing guys, Nick Mears. I mean, it was Nick Mears was warming up when the game started because they just knew they were going to use him that day. There were so many guys in that bullpen who were overused because of the lack of depth in games that these starters could go. And I think that was a big problem that the Brewers had last season. And I think now with this young staff here, I think they all have good command of the strike zone. And I think that's going to be a huge plus for this team. So I am not concerned at all about the rotation heading into this season here. The biggest question, I guess, that I have, and this is an interesting question, is who's going to be the closer? Who's going to be the closer for this team? There's a couple different options, right? Between Abner Uribe and Trevor McGill. I know I've seen some people talking about Zerpa because what they saw in the World Baseball Classic. I think Zerpa is going to be a fantastic reliever for the Brewers. There was another question that was asked about Zerpa coming in, and that was, how long does it take for Zerpa to make the Isaac Collins trade worth it? I think he has, and I think he will. It's going to be quick for Zerpa in this one. Zerpa was fantastic. I thought he was fantastic in spring. He showed a lot of great stuff there. I think Zerpa's got an electric arm. I think he's going to be great for this team. I think the question mark you're going to have, I think he's going to be in that seventh inning role, I would say. I think that's going to allow him and Jared Koenig to kind of work together in there. I know both lefties, but I think I could see him and Jared Koenig kind of working together in that middle ground there. I think you keep Abner Uribe as your setup man, and then Trevor McGill stays as a closer. You have a reliable setup man that could be a closer then, which works good. I think that works good, is having a two-headed monster. You remember back to 2018 when they had the three-headed monster, right? You had Corey Knebel, you had Josh Hader, you had Jeremy Jeffress. You had the ability of three guys who could shut down games for you. Now you have the ability for two guys at least to be able to shut down games for you. And I think that's a huge thing to have, is that even if, say you're playing, you have a stretch of 11 games or something like that, and McGill's throwing in 9 of them because you just keep winning. You have the ability now where you don't have to have McGill close down every game. You have the ability that Abner could go out there, or you have the ability that maybe you could throw a Zerpa out there to try and shut down a game. I like having that versatility of having multiple guys that you feel comfortable with being able to close down games. But if you were to ask me right now, I would say it's going to go Uribe to McGill there at the back end of that bullpen there. So that's where I'm kind of at with that. The rotation, I feel good about the rotation. Young guys galore. I agree. It adds a little bit more nerve, right? It adds more question mark into it. But I think with the talent that they have in these young guys between Sprout and Harrison, I love it. I think they're going to be okay in there. Brandon Woodruff at the back end there, I think he has a steady hand. He's going to be the reliable guy at the back end, but he's going to be able to help these young guys navigate a Major League Baseball season. And then top half there, Misiorowski and Chad Patrick, both those guys a couple years in, a year in, those guys are solid arms. Year into their MLB careers there. And both of them, I think both of them are going to be solid at the top half there. Misiorowski with the electric arm, Chad Patrick has got some good breaking stuff there to go along with it. So I think both those guys will be great there at the top. So when we wrap up we're going to come back, wrap up hour number one. I'm going to make sure that I hit all the Brewer questions, or well, at least I should say the pitching questions that we had. And then when we come back for hour number two, Kyle's going to be here. We're going to talk some American League baseball, and then Aaron's going to stop by. We have National League baseball to talk with Aaron there. We have a boatload of baseball yet to get to today here on the show. We'll be right back here for wrapping up hour number one. We'll be right back here on Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage, as we're coming back in here on this Wednesday. And hey, this next segment of the show here is brought to you by Casa M Spice Company. Are you craving bold gourmet flavor without those MSGs, fillers, or excess salt? Meet Casa M Spice Company, the award-winning spice blend born in Texas. This stuff is fantastic. You can put it on anything. I'm telling you, I put it on my breakfast, my eggs there. Fantastic. Put it on the ribs, pork butt. Anytime the Traeger comes out of the garage, I am taking the Casa M Spice out there with whatever I have. Burgers, brats, steaks, anything. Casa M Spice will flavor it up there. So we have a lot to get into with Brewer Talk here tonight on the show. And right where I want to start is just kind of talking about the bats for this team, talking about the offense, what we're going to see this year for this Milwaukee Brewer team. And one question I got, and I just want to hit this right off top because I just want to just get it out of the way, there's a lot of fan questions that came in, a lot of fans of the show here, and then across social media, I got a lot of questions there. If you want to be involved in the show, make sure you do it, 715-990-4914. 715-990-4914. So I'm just going to go through all these questions, and I'm going to see if I have any time left for anything else to talk about here tonight on the show. But there was a question that came across, and that was, when could we see some of the Brewers' top prospects up at the big league level? And I think that has a lot to do with like a Jesus Mate, Luis Pena, Lara's in that conversation, Andrew Fisher, I would also throw in that conversation with it right now. When do you expect to see them at the big league level? I don't expect to see like Amade. I don't know. Fisher, I think Fisher actually is going to make it the hardest decision for the Brewers not to bring him up because of how good he's been. I mean, we watched him in that spring training game take Mason Miller and just shoot one against him into a gap, like on a 102 mile per hour fastball, and just took it and just sent it. And you don't see that a lot out of really young guys, out of prospects coming up. There is, I mean, I'm not saying it's, just, whoa, it's never happened before. Like, you do see it, but just the confidence, the what he shows when he's in the box there, watching him play in the World Baseball Classic there and just seeing him, he's dancing, he's singing, going up to the plate. Like, this guy's, he's got a different kind of fire to him. He's got a different kind of edge to him. And it's going to be really hard for the Brewers to keep him down for a very long time, especially with how good that bat is. But I think it's going to be, I don't think you'll see him this season unless if you have a lot of injury, then you could potentially see him. I think Made, I don't expect to see him anytime soon here. I think it's going to be a little bit before you see some of the top bats there for the prospects going up, but never say never. I'll never say never. We could potentially see some of these guys at some points here, but I just don't foresee it anytime soon. So that's just where I wanted to start with this one today. But a big question, this has got to be one of the bigger questions that I think people had, was when the Brewers kind of announced what the roster was going to look like there, what the active roster is, and who they have traveling, and who made the team, who didn't make the team. I think one of the biggest questions that was asked was, because I said it a little while back there, I said I did not see Blake Perkins not making the roster. I really did. I thought there was no doubt. I thought there was no doubt he'd make it because he's your defensive substitution. You weren't expecting him to be an everyday guy. He was just going to be that defensive substitution. You were just going to bring him in when you needed him, kind of thing, late in the game, whatever. Didn't end up that way. And I said weeks ago, Brandon Lockridge was going to make it a tough decision for the Brewers to make in that outfield. And he did. Brandon Lockridge in this spring has been nothing short of fantastic. And looking at what he did down there, he had 318 in 16 games. He had 14 hits. He had 4 home runs to go along with it, 11 RBIs. He was fantastic down there in spring. And he showed a lot of promise for what you could get out of him. And we know that he's got a lot defensively. So Brandon Lockridge, I said weeks ago, was going to make it tough. I thought, honestly, he was going to make it tough for Garrett Mitchell, because Garrett Mitchell has still struggled with the swing and miss. He still has an issue with his chase and his bat to ball, right? It's simple, right? It seems simple, right? It seems so simple, but it's not. It really isn't, right? Hitting a major league pitch is nothing but simple. But I said Garrett Mitchell, maybe starting him down in the minors wasn't a bad idea. He has options. I believe he still has options. So starting him down in the minors was not going to be a bad idea. Just because you can get him consistent work, he could work through some of the kinks, and then hopefully at some point you feel comfortable, you bring him up. I thought that was going to be a good solution to the problem. They just surprised me and said, no, that's okay. We're just going to send Blake Perkins. I did not expect that. So maybe I'm in the minority of that one there. I think Brandon Lockridge is the right choice. I think Brandon Lockridge deserved to make the opening day roster. I really do. I just was surprised that it was at the expense of Blake Perkins. I didn't think they'd do that. So you see that outfield now. You look at it. Who's going to be your guys, right? Who's going to be the guys out there in the outfield? This is where I think it's going to get interesting. You're for sure Sal Frelick in right field, right? I don't know for 100. I don't know 100% if Garrett Mitchell or Brandon Lockridge are for sure the center fielders, just because of Jake Bauers. And trying to keep Jake Bauers out of the lineup is going to be impossible, because Jake Bauers has been, if you want to talk about guys who've been fantastic here to start this spring training, start the year, if Jake Bauers continues on this torrent stretch that he's on right now, I could see Jake Bauers forcing the hand to have him, because you want to have Andrew Vaughn in the lineup. And then if Jake Bauers is in, you want to find a spot for him. Christian Yelich currently occupies the DH spot. So that's a tough call, right? You're not going to sit Yelich. So does Yelich go out to left field? I don't hate the idea of Yelich in left field. I think, honestly, maybe having Yelich play the field a little bit is an okay thing. They said that he's feeling great, and that's why we've seen a little bit more of him in these exhibition games and in spring playing in the outfield there. But I also see it as keeping a guy in tune to the game, because sometimes being that DH, you have 4 at-bats a game. You're only really involved in the game in quotations for 4 at-bats. Outside of that, you're just sitting in the dugout, hanging out, not really doing anything, getting cold. If you're out there in the field a little bit there, you're chasing fly balls, whatever it is, you're getting some of that. You're getting that rep, you're getting that gameplay, and you're in the game. You're staying in the game. Maybe that helps him at the plate. So I wouldn't hate if that's the case. I wouldn't hate seeing Yelich out in the outfield a little bit there. But if you do keep Yelich at the DH spot, you could see Jake Bauers maybe play left field, then you slide Jackson Chourio over to center. I know defensively a lot of people would rather see Lockridge or Garrett Mitchell out there in center, but I think Jackson Chourio can lock it down. I think he gives you your best offensive outfield there, is if you have Yelich or Jake Bauers in left, and then you potentially see one of that. Now, I'm not saying opening day, that's the way that I'm rolling it, right? I'm not saying that you don't start Garrett Mitchell in center or start Brandon Lockridge in center. I'm not saying that you don't start one of them out there to begin with. But if they start to get a little cold at the plate, or they're not feeling it offensively, they're just not there, and Jake Bauers is hitting for you, or Yelich is hitting and you want to see Jake Bauers, that could be a potential way that they kind of shake it a little bit. Now, is Bauers an everyday guy out there? No, but I think it's a possibility that you could see them maybe put Yelich out there every day, or flip-flop those two around to try to give you your best offensive grouping that you can have. I saw Brandon Lockridge taking reps over at first base the other day, too, so I don't know what's up with that. Why you need another first baseman, I don't know. Maybe just have that backup in case Jake Bauers is in the outfield. I have no idea. I have no idea why you would work that like that, but that's just a video that I saw the other day was Brandon Lockridge taking some reps at first base. So another versatile guy that the Brewers have in that lineup. But that's it was a surprise, I guess, that Blake Perkins didn't make the roster. But at the same time, it's hard to keep a healthy Garrett Mitchell out of the big league roster. And it's also hard to keep Brandon Lockridge out at this point here, because he's been fantastic. So that's why I kind of think it worked out that way for the Brewers this season here. Outside of that, there was another question that came. How much confidence do I have in Joey Ortiz going into this season? Joey Ortiz has looked better in spring. I mean, if you take stock in spring training stats and what his bats look like down there, he's putting some good swings on the baseball down there. He's still got a couple strikeouts to go along with it right now. I mean, that's going to happen, right? You're going to strike out here. But all in all, from what I've seen out of spring right now, I have some confidence. I have some confidence that Joey Ortiz is going to be able to figure it out. I do. I think he's going to be a solid bat. I don't think you can ever expect Joey Ortiz to be a 270 hitter. I don't think he's going to be a 270 hitter. I just don't see that at all. Realistically, I could see him he's a 250. he's a 250 guy. That's where I think you expect Joey Ortiz to be. And if he can get you 250, I think you live with that. I really do. I think you live with that. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with Joey Ortiz at this very moment. Not a huge bat in your lineup. He's a 9-hole hitter, and that's okay. That's okay. You got to have 9-hole hitter. That's going to be your Joey Ortiz on this season. Do the Brewers, and this was a question I got about Bryce Terang. Do the Brewers get a Bryce Terang contract done anytime soon? I don't think so. I don't. I'm losing confidence day by day. Do I hope they do? Yes, but I think they have to pretty darn soon. I do, because I think Bryce Terang, I had a question that I was going to ask if I got to it. Is Bryce Terang, or should he be considered an all-star superstar? And I think he should be considered a superstar because he is the second best, if not the best, second baseman in the National League, behind or ahead of Ketel Marte. So if you ask me, yes, he's a superstar already, and I think he's on pace for a fantastic year. If he has another fantastic year and has the glove to go along with it, the price tag is only getting higher. And I don't know, does he take a discount for the Brewers? I don't know. There's a lot of money out there to be had. Here's the thing. We're heading into 2027, which a lot of people expect to see the shutdown. They expect to see a salary cap implemented in some way, shape, or form. So do I potentially see the Brewers waiting and seeing what happens with that? Yes, I do. Because I think that's going to settle a lot of things, and I think that would help in their contract negotiations with Bryce Terang. So I think they're going to wait. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Do I want it to happen pretty darn soon? Yes, I think it needs to happen, because if they can lock up Bryce Terang long-term deal, right now you look at who the Brewers have on their roster and you say, who are your guys who are superstars? Who are your guys who have potential to be superstars and superstar for a long time? Bryce Terang's up there. Jackson Churrio's up there. Like, those are your two guys where you're like, those guys are cornerstone pieces that you can build around in this lineup. And that's where I think you have to keep a guy like Bryce Terang around as long as you can. Right now, you got him for a couple years. Yeah, 2030, I think he'd be out the door. 2029, 2030 in there somewhere, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So you have some years left on Bryce Terang, but don't quote me on that. I don't have it up in front of me right now. I thought it was like 2029, 2030 was somewhere in there with Bryce Terang's contract being up. But I think the Brewers will get something worked out. I think they're going to wait until after everything goes through with this shutdown. If a cap gets put in, if a floor gets put in, what happens? I think they're going to wait for that and then kind of go from there with Bryce Terang to see what kind of happens there. I think that's a big thing they're waiting for. Another question I had, and like I said, I'm just going through all the questions that were sent in from people out there, just listeners to the show and stuff like that. Was Andrew Vaughn's second half of 2025 a fluke? Can he be a productive piece all of 2026? Yeah, I do. I think when he came to Milwaukee, I think it was, you hear it all the time, guys getting fresh starts and how that benefits them, and getting into a different environment and being able to work through some of their kinks and stuff like that in their swing and just being able to reset. And I think he needed that hard reset when he came over from the White Sox. I think with the White Sox, when he played for the White Sox, it's kind of a drag every single day. You're on a losing team. You just don't know. You don't know how to take that next step and what you need to do to get over that hump and to find yourself again. And coming to a winning situation in Milwaukee with a winning clubhouse and guys around him to kind of help him, to motivate him, to make him want to come to the ballpark every single day, work on his craft, find his swing again, find his confidence, because hitting there's a lot of mental side to hitting. And when you get into that slump, having the right guys around you and manager and Pat Murphy to be able to help you get out of that slump is a huge thing. So I think him coming to Milwaukee, coming to that kind of organization right there, being able to just breathe for a second there. He's on a winning club now. He can relax. He's got a lot of good guys around him, a lot of good players around him. I think that's a big thing. You don't have that huge pressure to produce. And he just did. And he just started hitting. And I think that's kind of where he's going to stay right now, is he's found the confidence in his bat again. He's always had a good bat. It's just he lost that edge. He lost that confidence in it. I think he got that back in Milwaukee. So I think Vaughn will be a productive piece. I don't know if he goes on a torrid stretch like he did last season there to end the year. I don't know if that's quite the case, but I think he's going to have a big, solid year for the Brewers. I do. I think he's going to have a solid year. I think the power numbers are going to be there for him. I think he's going to be in that 20 range. I do. I think he'll be in that 20 range for home runs. Average-wise, 260. 260 would be solid for me, if you ask me, with Andrew Vaughn. If he's above that, fantastic. Like, you'll take that 8 day of the week. I think he's going to be a great piece for the Brewers this year. I think, and this is a question that I had, what does a healthy Mitchell mean for the Brewers? I think it's key for the Brewers. I think it's a key for the Brewers this season. If you can keep Garrett Mitchell healthy, if he stays healthy for an entire season for the Milwaukee Brewers, and he finds that back, Garrett Mitchell has all the tools in the world. All the tools. Speed, power. Speed, power. He's got the ability to leg him out. He's got everything that you could want in that. And then you look at the glove. He's got a great glove out there. So when I look at Garrett Mitchell, I think he's got all the tools. All the tools to be really good. The thing that gets him is the discipline at the plate and the swing and miss. That's what's going to get him. So now it's about how do the Brewers figure out Garrett Mitchell and how do they find a way to work with that bat, work with him a little bit, and find that consistency at the plate. I think that's the big thing to watch for with Garrett Mitchell. But if he can find it at the plate, if he can find it, if he can stay out of trouble in there, right? Avoid swinging at bad pitches, try to find that plate discipline that we know he has in there. I think Garrett Mitchell could be a key piece to the Brewers, something that's missing right now. Another big bat, because he does have the ability to hit you 15, 20 home runs. He's got that ability. He's got some pop in that bat. If you can keep him healthy and you can find that discipline at the plate, I like the odds of Garrett Mitchell. I do. So I think Garrett Mitchell could be a key piece to the Brewers this season, something that they've been missing for a little while now. Let's see here. Going through the questions that I was sent in. Did the Brewers make enough moves to keep pace with the Cubs this season? Did they make enough moves? I think they made some underrated moves. I do. I think they made some underrated moves that not enough people are talking about. Talking about like a guy like David Hamilton, what we've seen out of him from spring. I know he's not a household name. I know when you hear David Hamilton, everybody their ears don't perk up and they're like, whoa, David Hamilton, the Brewers got him. But David Hamilton, Pat Murphy talked about him a little bit, said, could he be a guy or Pat Murphy came out and said that he's going to be one of them candidates to have a breakout year. And I could see it just watching him down there in spring, the exit velocity that he's had and just his ability to put the ball in play, do the little things. I think David Hamilton could be a big piece, a very under the radar move that the Brewers had. Luis Rengifo, if all goes right, yeah. That's if all goes right. I think Luis Rengifo is going to be a solid ad, but I really do think David Hamilton's a very underrated guy. And then just looking in the bullpen, and the starting rotation, what they did this offseason, getting Brandon Sprout, getting Harrison in there, and then also adding a guy just a couple days ago and Jake Woodford there I believe he came over from the Rays there in a trade. So getting Jake Woodford in there, I think that's going to be a solid add to that bullpen depth, getting another righty down there. They had a lot of lefties, getting another righty down there in the bullpen. You have a lot of weapons on this team. A lot of weapons in this rotation and bullpen right now. A lot of electric arms. And I think those are very underrated moves. They aren't the big flashy moves like the Alex Bregman coming over, right? They didn't make those, or the Edward Cabrera coming over from the Marlins. They didn't make any flashy moves, but they made solid moves, solid depth piece moves. And I think adding them to the already stars that they have in this lineup, I think they made enough moves. I do. I think they made enough moves to keep pace with the Cubs. I just think they're very underrated moves that nobody's going to talk about until they work out. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one there. Let's see here. Will this team need to rely more heavily on offense over pitching? No, I think the pitching staff's going to be better than what people think. I do. I think the pitching staff's going to be better than what people think. I think they see the young guys in there, they see the rookies, and they say, it's not going to work out, right? It's not going to work out. It's not going to work out. I really do. I see this pitching staff being way better than what people are saying. Way better than what people are saying. So I'm going to stick there. I think it's going to be an even, like they've been in the past. I think it's going to be a little bit of an even amount there. They're going to rely on that pitching to keep them in games. And then they're going to rely on the offense, of course, to put up a couple runs here to, score, right? That's the way you win games. But I think the Brewers, honestly, it's going to be even. I do. I think the pitching staff's going to be solid at the end of the day. Let's see here. Man, a lot of questions to get to. I don't even know if I have enough time to get to all of them here. Could Jake Bauers, who is swinging a hot bat, see time in the outfield to get him and Vaughn both in? Yes. Yeah. I already technically answered that question before there, talking about the outfield and where we could see everybody kind of fixing in. I could see Jake Bauers definitely getting some outfield time there, just the way he's been swinging the bat, to try and keep his bat in the lineup along with Andrew. The Brewers, I think, are going to do a lot of those weird things this season to try and get the hot bats in there and try to keep offense on the field. I think Jake Bauers plays a fine outfield. Is he a natural outfielder? No, but I think he plays a fine outfield that you can stick him out there every once in a while to try and keep that bat in there. So I could definitely see it. I know last season they were working with Andrew Vaughn trying to put him in different places around the infield too. So maybe we could see them. We've seen crazy things. And that's all I'm going to say. We've seen crazy things, so definitely keep an eye on all those right there. Let's see here. Any last ones I want to hit here before we hit a break? Let's see here. I'll hit these when I come back. So we're going to hit a break. We're going to come back. And I'm going to wrap up hour number 1, finish up these couple questions I got here, wrap up hour number 1, and then we'll look ahead to hour number 2 here. We got a lot more coming at you. We'll be right back here on Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage, as we're coming back in here on this Wednesday. And hey, I know back-to-back segments there. I had the same ad read, and I am sorry. There was a mix-up. I got confused. I was rolling along. I have it written down, and I read the same one twice there. So you got to learn about Kasem Spice twice there. So there you go. But this next segment, we're going to wrap up hour number 1, look ahead to hour number 2. This next segment is brought to you by Chili Implement. Tackle your toughest jobs on the farm or in your yard with equipment from Chili Implement. Visit Chili Implement and find what you need today. And also, Jeff Holthouse with State Farm Insurance there. For your home, farm, auto, and renters and life insurance, contact Jeff Holthouse with State Farm Insurance. There we go. I fixed it right there. I got it, both of them in there. Again, sorry. I get scatterbrained. You guys know I get scatterbrained. I get all over the place. And I did the same ad read twice, and I was just confused. So anyways, wrapping up the Brewer conversation for hour number 1 here. Great questions from everybody out there. I just wanted to thank everybody who sent questions in. If I didn't get to all of your questions, I'm sorry. I got a time limit. The radio, they yell at me when I get over 2 hours. Hopefully they're not listening to this because they always are very, very lenient on when I get over the 2-hour mark here with my quota. And they put me on a limit. So I don't know. Hopefully we can get more time here. And I'll vouch for it. I'll vouch for getting more time so I can get to all your questions next time. But if I missed any of them, hit me up again. 715-990-4914. That is 715-990-4914. Shoot me your questions. I'll get to them. If I don't get to them today, we'll get to them Saturday here on the show. We'll continue this Brewer talk over. We got a long season ahead, so we got lots of time to talk about all these Brewer questions there. But when we come back from the break, we're going to hit a break. We're going to come back here. Kyle's going to stop by. We're going to do our American League. We're going to go through the Dakota standings for the American League, National League. Kyle's going to stop by. We're going to do the American League, talk about the teams over there a little bit, dark horse teams, and then look over at the NL with Aaron. We got a lot of Brewer talk yet to get to today here on the show. Tons of stuff to get to. We'll be right back here on Wisconsin Sports on the Go Trade.